Welcome back to the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 66. I can never remember the exact number, but that is the one. I'm joined by myself and Will, Casuals Corner MMA on Instagram, TikTok, all platforms. And I feel like there's only one way to kick this off because right before we press record, you said there's only one way we can take this. And I feel like we're at that telepathic level where I know exactly what you're talking about based on what you've been doing in the week. And the floor is yours. I'm gonna let you say it, and I'm gonna respond to see if I got it right.
Toe Wrestling World Championships 2024.
On the money. On the money.
I think the best way to go about this, before I go off on a complete rant about my newfound obsession of toe wrestling, ask me some questions.
I'm going to do a little comparison. Is it weirder than your experience at Fight Circus? Or does that still top it?
Way less weird.
Why is that?
It doesn't sound how it actually is as a sport. You hear the words toe wrestling and you think gimmicky, you think fetishy, you think ridiculous, which is all true to a certain extent. But this is a legitimate sport. Make no mistake about it. And the more layers that you peel back within toe wrestling, you actually realize this is a legitimate sport and people take this legitimately seriously. And when you see what it means to people, when you see the matches, when you see the intensity, and when you see the reactions of these people and the lengths they go to win, you start realizing how much potential this sport has. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
I did see a clip of you, and it was Paul, if I'm not mistaken. From, I mean, you know. So Paul's pod on Instagram, competing. Is that the word you use? I guess it is. Does it get pretty intense? It was toes locked within toes. That was all I could really gather. You're gonna have to, as a newfound practitioner of the game, you're gonna have to fill me and the listeners in on what exactly it entails.
I feel like a newfound practitioner, but at the core of me, I feel like I've always been a part of this sport, to be perfectly honest. So essentially what it is arm wrestling for toes. And when you actually flip the switch between, this is somewhat of a joke, to think how international arm wrestling is and how seriously people take that, there isn't a lot of difference. Think about it. Think how many sports have come out like arm wrestling, like thumb wars even, slap fighting, all of these different things, but no components with the feet. So you think of arm wrestling and what a sport that is worldwide. Toe wrestling, my friend, is right there. But the interesting thing about this, so my friends that own Amity Production Studio, they have bought the rights to the sport. So they own the sport. They own the sport of toe wrestling. Oh, and this is not a new phenomenon. This goes back 30, 40 years to Ashbourne, where it was born, this tiny village in the Midlands of England. And there is 30 years of heritage and lineage to the champions. So the man that competed yesterday in the finals is a 17-time world championship. He's gone 30 years never losing on one left side of his foot. It's ridiculous. The other man on the other side is a local to Ashbourne, 3-time world champion, and he's even had his toenails surgically removed so he has better leverage in his technique.
Are you serious?
I'm being deadly serious. You think this is a joke?
Does that not hurt? But I guess you just get numb to it, right?
You think that this is a joke until you watch people compete and you see the reactions. And I'd never gone to an event before. So I'm rocking up with no idea what to expect, to be perfectly honest. Long story short, there's hundreds of people that have now come out in the town watching it, people that have heard on the radio, people that have seen it on BBC News, people that are just walking through the town and seeing all this commotion. on a tractor with a full production studio, because this isn't a couple of people with iPhones making a bit of content. These are full-time media creators for the likes of Audi, Jägermeister, the BAFTAs, New Balance. Real production studio has completely rejuvenated this sport and is documenting the stories of these people. And honestly, it is fascinating. It is fascinating. Seeing the passion that these people have, seeing the reactions. One of the ladies' finals, when she won, her granddad started bursting into tears. It was her third-time champion. First and foremost, I need to point out...
I shouldn't laugh, but...
No, you can laugh.
I should laugh.
It's hilarious.
I should.
It's brilliant. I can't explain how phenomenal the sport is, but what's so interesting about it is, as I mentioned, no one knows about it. No one knows about it, but it actually is a 30-year-old sport, and I'm looking at all of the patterns throughout the world of attention, through media, through sport, through content, and I'm just seeing their vision. And I jumped on a call with them, and I said, I want to be involved. Get me on the board. I want to be involved in growing this sport. I couldn't feel more passionate about it. I completely get what Dana White is like with slap fighting. And I also got even more why Dana White is almost so burnt out and fed up with the UFC. Because he started at its very inception when no one knew about it. It was rough and ready round the edges. And there was everything to gain in regards to evolving the sport. And now it's at a point of maturation. There's not much more growth around the sport in the macro that you can make. But when you get something at its complete birthplace, like Ashbourne, you have the heritage, you have the country, you have these characters, you have all of the ingredients for a phenomenal sport.
You have a toe wrestling countdown, like, or embedded series for toe wrestling.
This is the fun thing about it. You can incorporate all of these things straight over, that there's infinite room for growth. So this championship, the last championship was just in a tiny pub with a few people, and there wasn't really much song or dance about it. This one, lots more competitors, hundreds of people in the audience, and £500 on the line. That's the second event. The third event is likely not only going to be in the birthplace of Ashbourne, but likely an international event in London with even more audience, and they're trying to look at prize funds of £10,000. And every time that you level up the prize funds, Jiu-Jitsu has just taught us, you bring out prize funds and you get attention. You legitimize anything. So as soon as you put big numbers on the board, people will draw towards it. So it will move away from people just walking down the street going, I'll have a go at that. So now people are actually putting in a bit of training. Now they're putting in a bit of work. There's 10 grand on the line. In 5 years, it'll probably be 50 grand on the line, 100 grand on the line. Honestly, I couldn't be more excited about toe wrestling. And that's why I'm wearing the t-shirt as well, which is a phenomenal t-shirt as well.
Spot that.
By the way, I need to turn around so you can see it fully. I can't.
Yeah, go for it. I apologize to the audio listeners, but we're about to witness a marvel here.
Can you see it?
Straighten your back a little bit. Yeah. Your arch. Yeah, I'm so confused on what I'm looking at. Yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm looking at though. Like, what what is it? I don't understand. Am I being stupid? Like, what's the little...
stupid. It's literally a foot.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, I see it. I see it. Well, not anymore.
My point is, and what I'll end on this before if you have any follow-up questions, my point to them, why I was getting so excited, is not only does it have all the ingredients to be incredibly viral, not only does it have the ingredients to be a very legitimate sport, not only does it have the ingredients of phenomenal characters and storytelling, but the angle that everyone cannot work, for the most part, is content. And they have a phenomenal production company at the spearhead of it, which is their baby. So they pour a lot of time, a lot of attention, and a lot of energy into it. And no one's going to be able to compete with that. They have an archive of 30 years. They have a whole heritage of the sport. No one else has that. Quite literally, no one else has that. And they own all the rights to it. So I'm so excited. I want to be on the board of directors in toe wrestling.
So that's something you're actually looking at doing.
100%.
Look at you making moves.
100%. I couldn't be more passionate about it.
I'd be happy to go to the next one, 100% in London. I mean, that's easy. If it's, mate, I'm there. I'm there for it, 100%.
I'm making sure everyone I know in this vicinity that works within combat sports is going to be there. And once you get a taste for the atmosphere, it's very engrossing. It really is, because when there's a concept which has maximum simplicity in regards to, okay, I have feet, so I can imagine that far, and this person needs to get it to this side. The barriers to entry as a fan are minimized. And when you see the emotion within these people, you just want to feel who is going to win. You just want to see who is going to have this outburst of emotion. So it is, honestly, it's captivated. I love it.
I'm going to have to ask you before we move on. With a one-word answer, did you win?
Yes.
I never expected any less. Nice. So you just pin the other foot then? Is that it? It's just... That's the crux of it.
You entwine toes, big toes, right? So you interlock your big toes. Now, your heel cannot come off of the toedium.
That's good. That's good.
And there cannot be any disconnect. As soon as you disconnect, it's a breakaway. So you have to have your heel on the toedium, and you have to be connected. Even if it's just the soles of your feet are still touching, you're still connected. But as soon as you break contact, breakaway. You have to have your bum on the floor, and you have to have your opposite leg raised and hands behind your back. That's the rules. You then have to very simply touch the other person's foot or toe to the side wall, to the barrier. And every time you do, you get a point.
Pretty simple. Well, as you said, it's a simple concept. And as you said, that's the appeal. That is the appeal. I think it's the simple concepts and what you can do to dress them up and I guess expand on the core foundations that what makes it so exciting. Which I almost think like the UFC and more so mixed martial arts in general is kind of like the exception to that, because it isn't really a simple concept, because fundamentally you've got so many different factors. Even from the first UFC event, it was fundamentally different martial arts going against each other. So there's about a million different factors at play. Every fight was different. And I guess that's kind of a concept that's carried through even to now. I don't know, a bit of a philosophical tangent.
Just on that, a last one. And this, people always talk about hot takes. This is my hot take.
Oh boy. This is going to
upset some people. But when I explain it, maybe they can try and see the angle that I'm coming at it from. I'm not a fan of slap fighting. I've said this before. I don't watch it. I'm not entertained by it. I don't watch the behind the scenes. I don't watch any element of slap fighting. But when Dana comes out and says, I anticipate this to be bigger than the UFC, I believe him. Wholeheartedly believe him. Now, what do we conclude as bigger is a very important question. Do I believe it's going to have as much intrinsic fanfare across the world? Possibly not. Do I think it's going to have a cult-like following? Possibly not. But if you're talking about bigger being metrics per month and attention, 100% I can see that. What people always mix up is they think because it's simple, it won't be able to overtake it. But what people aren't realizing is because it's simple, it allows it to overtake it. The more simpler something is, the less barriers there are for someone to understand it. If you flick on MMA and you've never watched it, you think, what the hell is happening? And it's almost impossible to digest. You put on a video of someone slapping someone, everyone can understand that. So I'm not a massive fan of it, but I do understand why he says that. Regardless, that is where we're at with toe wrestling.
Toe wrestling. Yeah. I'm sure the thing is, I can say with confidence that I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. Like in some time in the future. Like judging by I obviously I take your word, quite sincerely. So if you say it's going to be a big deal, I definitely believe you. But yeah, looking ahead, UFC 306 is on the horizon. I feel like it is a bit of an elephant in the room. We can't really shy away from it because, of course, it is the first, I think, ever combat sports event. Yes, it is at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And regardless of what you think of that, it's what is essentially a giant advertising ball.
Yeah, true.
You know, there is a bit of appeal there. I'm curious to see what it looks like. And, you know, you can criticize Dana White and the UFC for a lot of different things, but one thing you can't is their attention and care towards presentation and appearance. That's something they've worked hard over the years to create this professional, I always call it professional veneer because it really is. Underneath it's less so, but you know, they've always worked hard to create that image, and I don't expect it to be any different with this UFC Sphere event. I think they're going to go all out with the, you know, the fancy LED graphics, etc., all of that. And you know, obviously that covers what is, in my opinion, I actually think it's quite an underrated, if we're specifically talking about the main card, yeah, underrated. I think there's a lot of hate about it. I know Dana White's propped it up as he usually does, but that is his job. You know, he's trying to sell pay-per-views. People forget that a lot of times. I almost feel he wants it to do well, so he's going to hype it up as if it is such. And I actually think, particularly the top 3 fights on the card, I think they're really, really fun matchups. And if I had to ask you for one fight on there that sticks out off the top of your head, if you don't have it up, that's fine. But there's got to be one matchup that comes to mind, even if it is the main event. Hit me with it.
It is the main event. But before I get onto that, just touching on what you said there, because you mentioned a few good things. The problem that he has is, yes, he's a promoter, but with anything, not just events, you have to be able to manage expectations. Because if you are not going to meet people's expectations, people are going to be disappointed at whatever level or whatever scale that is. I think the problem that he came into this one with was to say it was going to be the craziest event we've ever seen. And that may be true in regards to the event, but he also said fight card. Now, when you say that, and then you bring this to the table, good fight card, make no mistake. But when you've gone on a tour saying it's going to be the craziest ever, you're naturally just going to underperform on expectation management. I think not telling him how to do his job, I think one way you can sort of bypass that is by promoting the fights individually more, rather than saying this is going to be the most insane fight card ever. You actually just look at the fights a little bit more granular and big them up, rather than saying this whole card is going to be ridiculous. Let's just go into the details of the actual card, because there are fantastic athletes on there. You've got the likes of Daniel Zahuba. Obviously, the main event is the one that excites me the most. And the one gripe I have, this is a major gripe, but it is a relevant one. Answer me this.
Okay.
The most spectacular show on earth is what they're looking to deliver. And whatever you want to say about Sean O'Malley's mic skills or wit off the top of the dome, you cannot tell me the man is not a showman, and you cannot tell me the man does not perform under the brightest lights. You cannot tell me that. So why is he wearing black shorts?
Is that true? Well, he's wearing the black and gold.
Why?
I mean, is it that? I get it, but is it that big of a deal?
No.
What kind of shorts he wears?
Think about it. Why?
Well, I mean, are you asking me, or you want like a sensible answer?
Give me any. I can't think
of any answer. The sensible answer is because he's the champion, but the alternative is because, I mean, well, he shouldn't be wearing black shorts because he's Sean O'Malley. He's different gravy. He's his own thing. The UFC want to prop him up. They gotta, I don't want to say cater to his demands, but you have him wearing the pink shorts. It's recognizable. It's him. So that's what they should be doing. But I don't think it's, at the end of the day, I think what people are going to be looking for is the highlight finish. Call me boring, but
I just think it's a missed opportunity. I really do think it's a missed opportunity. And he touched upon it in an interview with Bisping. And I can't help but feel like he is very on the ball. The UFC, and rightly so to a certain extent, have focused, comes back to what I was saying earlier. they focused a lot of the build-up and a lot of the attention on the sphere. Just the sphere.
Yeah.
Which, so they should, but also play into your strength simultaneously. And your strength is you have one of the most colourful and spectacular in regards to performance fighters we've ever seen, and you're putting him in black shorts, and you're really prioritizing the sphere over necessarily the showmanship of that. I think they could have done a better job at marrying the two together. I think
it's a case of prioritizing short-term success over long-term, which is unusual because I think the UFC generally are very good at catering their, nurturing rather is the word I use, stars and building them up. Sean O'Malley is probably the best example of that, quite literally. They took their time with him, and he did start to garner that reputation as a can crusher a little bit. But then he said, okay, let's give him Piotr Jan. And yeah, the decision was debatable, but he showed he could hang at the top level, regardless of what you thought of that decision. And then he went and goes and knocks out Aljamain Sterling to win the belt. And now he's had his first defense, and he's exactly where the UFC want him to be. So they're very good at doing that, which is why I think it is kind of strange, as you say, that they've been focusing more on the sphere rather than Sean. I haven't really seen much promo for him as the champion.
Yeah.
At all. I'll say it. I've barely seen anything on it. It's always been sphere. And, it will wear off. It's a novelty thing. It's, this isn't a regular occurrence, the sphere. It's obviously cost them a lot of money. They've said that. So I understand the appeal and trying to prop that up as this big thing. But long term, you want to be continuing to put your energy and resources in towards promoting probably your biggest name in the sport outside of Conor McGregor and Alex Pereira. There a lot of ways that all three of those guys are interchangeable. So yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I think long term they should be focusing more on Sean, and I'm sure they will. I think this is going to be one of those things where, as I said, it's not necessarily a one-time thing, but it's not a common occurrence. So I don't know where we're going to go, but I think we should. Sorry, you look like you're about to jump in there.
I just want to paint a picture. I just want to make a mental image. You close your eyes.
I'm closing my eyes. Eyes are closed.
And all of a sudden, Lupe Fiasco, superstar, just starts rising into a full 360-degree audio experience. You begin to open your eyes, and the whole sphere, as far as the eye can see, just lights up in pink.
I do imagine that's what's going to happen.
And Sean O'Malley's walking out in the pink shorts, stoic, calm, and composed as always, with one of the greatest songs, walking into the greatest arena for the greatest event. You cannot put the man in black shorts. Sorry, can't do it.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I don't know why I feel so passionate about it. I just do.
I always thought the sphere is going to do that heavy lifting anyway. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't worry too much about the shorts. I've always a fan of the black and gold. I never get old for me, but each to their own. But I understand. I understand where you're coming from. But I think we should jump straight into our predictions, starting off on the main event. I think I'll kick it off. No. Usually I show it back, to be fair, but I was like, I kind of want to get mine in there.
I know.
Yeah. Because usually you do go first. I'm like, okay, let me get mine. But I know we've sporadically touched on this beforehand, and I've spoke about this opinion on stream. So anyone who's a regular on my stream listening to the episode will already know where I stand on this matchup, and I've been pretty firm on it. I changed my opinion on it a while back, way before this fight got announced, and I've been firm on it ever since. I'm in the firm camp and believer that Sean O'Malley is going to knock out Merab Dvalishvili inside the first round. I might, second I'll allow it, but I don't think Merab's chin holds up. I think he leaves himself open, particularly in those pocket exchanges, which I know isn't really where Sean likes to work. But regardless, he's one of the best at finding the chin. He's an absolute sniper. And I don't think Merab will be able to enact his game plan. I actually compare it to something like Chimaev versus Whittaker, where I'm almost leaning towards Chimaev in that fight because I think he can knock him out early. But the case is, the other alternative is if he doesn't, Whittaker will take over in the later rounds. I see the same thing for Merab. Obviously, we know how good his cardio is. Not to sleep on Sean's or discredit it in any way, because I think it holds up as well. But when you have a guy relentlessly trying to take you down and dragging you across the fence, it requires a different kind of energy that it takes to hang it for those 25 minutes. So obviously, I naturally would lean towards Merab to take over into the championship rounds, but I don't think it's going to get there because I think Sean will find that chin really early. I really do. I'm going to have to throw it back to you because I don't think there's much to say. I think he'll land that 1-2 down the pipe and maybe follow up with the ground strikes here or there, or might just put him out instantly. I don't know. I just don't think Merab's chin will hold up. We've seen him get clipped by Cejudo. Marlon Moraes had him one punch away from losing his winning streak. I mean, you know where I stand. I think you're somewhat in the same camp, but your facial expressions might be telling me otherwise. I'm not sure.
What was my facial expression telling you?
I don't know. There was a mix of agreement and frowning, so I don't really know where you're standing right now.
That's just my
pondering face.
Correct, my pondering face. Thank you. Let's paint the pictures, right? Let's paint the paths to victory. That's what I like to do when I predict a fight. Lay on the table the paths to victory. Now, the paths to victory for Merab is no secret. Is going to be a similar style that we saw with Henry, similar style that we saw against Jose Aldo, Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan. The blueprints are there. We're not going to see any different approach. Now, Sean O'Malley's answered every question in the octagon. He's even answered the 5-round question. You touched upon somewhat. The only question that he hasn't answered is 5 rounds doing both. Different thing.
Yeah.
5 rounds striking is different to doing 5 rounds of mixed martial arts, which we've never seen. So even though that's a small question, and I believe he could answer it, there's still a question we haven't seen. My question when it comes to Merab is the momentum, of course, on his side. The cardio is on his side against absolutely anyone. How does he beat him if he is to get to these single legs, if he is to push him up against the cage? Because he's not so much of a submission artist, and he doesn't often land a lot of ground and pound. And I think if he does look to open up, if he establishes any position against Sean, I think A, it's going to be hard to establish, and I think B, as soon as he opens up and gives any posture, Sean is seriously tricky. He's going to be throwing up things from his back, whether it's elbows, arm bars, triangles. He's going to look to submit, sweep, and stand up. His single leg defense is arguably his best, and that's what we see Merab Dvalishvili go to most often. We see him go to that single leg defense. We saw it against Aljo, his limp leg against the cage. He does a good job of mitigating that, and it's hard to get there because he's constantly moving laterally out of both stances. So it's hard to pin him down. So when I just look at the styles of both fighters and ways to win, on the flip side, we have Sean that, as you said, is the sharpshooter. And we've seen Merab Dvalishvili. One of the things that his corner, not me, his corner picked up in his last fight against Henry, they said you have to be tighter defensively when exiting the pocket after your takedowns. Because what Merab does very well is just constantly spams takedowns. So sometimes he's not even looking for the takedown. He's just entering the hips to give you that look. The problem with that is because he becomes so nonchalant with those attempts because they're so frequent, sometimes his defense is also quite nonchalant. Yeah. So sometimes he's breaking away from that pocket and he's just a bit too nonchalant retracting. You do that against Sean O'Malley and he's landing that left hook like Henry Cejudo, like Marlon Moraes, and like you said, I think he then follows it up and knocks him down. Now, the weakness of Merab, sometimes not the smartest in those exchanges, I also think could be his benefit. Because the problem that high-level strikers have against Sean is they're seeing every look that he's giving, the feints, the twitches, the hip feints, the different attacks with the hands, that they get froze up. I don't think Merab's going to freeze. I think he's still just going to walk forward, walk into the fire and look to do his work. So his downfall could also be his strength. This is what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So you're seeing uppercuts, you're seeing the knees, and you're going to see that left hook, I believe, on the exit. I really think that's the one that gets it done. I think it's going to be the left hand of Sean O'Malley.
That was what I was thinking, but we never really see Sean land those big shots inside the pocket in those close exchanges. I don't doubt that he can, and I'm sure he'll look to throw it, but every time we see Sean do his best work on the feet with his striking, it's at that range where he's got his opponent at arm's length and he's working in mixing up the kicks and those straights down the middle. That for me is everything Sean O'Malley personifies. So you rarely really see him in those tight exchanges. But you're right, there is that really small window
Yeah.
when Merab comes up from that takedown attempt, whether he hits it or not, or for a scramble where the hands just drop for a second and then he resets. But there's about a second or two where we've seen him get clipped before. And yeah, that was where I imagine it realistically happening in terms of the finishing sequence. But I don't know if it would be a left hand. I don't know how we're going to see it, but I think we're both in agreement. Sean will get it done. But what round?
I think within 3. I think the first round is actually going to be a little bit of a staring contest. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of activity. We saw that in Merab's last fight against Henry. It was a little bit slower pace.
It's true.
And we also always really see that with Sean. He's never foot on the gas from the get. He usually gets a few looks from the outside, prods, probes, looks what reactions he's getting. Don't want to say downloads data, but there's a certain degree of that, right?
I hate that.
There's a certain degree of that. But there is a certain degree of that. And like you said, he usually does, how I'll sort of round this up, he usually does do his work on the outside, and there's no doubt on my mind that he could definitely do that. I just think those opportunities, because Merab covers distance very quickly, very low central gravity, covers distance very quickly, I think he's going to be looking for those longer shots to then get on the inside and try and get that timing on it. So I think, yeah, he'll have opportunities on the outside for sure, but I think Merab's going to try and create that chaos so often that we're probably going to see more opportunities prevail just exiting the pocket or maybe just within. And I think that's maybe Sean prioritizes the let's not get taken down first, then offense on the break, rather than offense, then defend second, if that makes sense. Of course, he'll still look to do that. I just think that's maybe the way we'll see that play out.
Also, I feel like a lot of people forget when they're making these predictions, and a lot of people leaning towards Merab, and as is their right. I think it's a close fight, and the odds are clearly reflecting that. But it takes, a lot of effort to take someone down.
True.
It's a whole nother ball game to keep them there. And I think that's really going to be the story of the fight. I think Sean probably will get taken down early, and it will happen, or maybe a couple of times. But I don't think he's going to struggle to get back up. He'll work his way back to the fence, scoot over, gradually work his base, stand up, and then work out the clinch. I really do. I think that's what's going to happen. Merab, as you said, he's not a huge submission threat. There's not much to look for there in terms of ground pound either. Akin to like someone like Colby Covington. I almost look at how Leon Edwards approached that fight at 296. He did very well to get back to his feet in the few times he even did get taken down. And his takedown defense held up as a whole. So I think we're going to see something similar there. Yeah, I think we're in agreement. Sean O'Malley with the knockout. Now, the co-main event, let's just jump straight into it, because for me, this is my fight of the night of choice.
Nice.
I've always been a big self-proclaimed Shevchenko fan for a long time. And I remember I was getting, you have the classic experience of trying to get your friends who've never watched MMA in their lives to watch an event with you. And that just so happened to be,
I've never
at the
heard
time, UFC 285. And I don't know if you can cast your mind back to the matchup on that card that Valentina Shevchenko had. But I spent a long time saying how she's, the technically best women's fighter, I think, on the planet. And I still do just stand by that in her prime. But she went and lost to Alexa Grasso in an absolutely massive upset and finally had her title streak snapped. And that obviously began the birth of a now pretty prominent rivalry, which is seeing its third chapter, for better or worse. Because if you cast your mind back again to their second fight, probably one of the worst round scorecards in recent memory. For those of you who don't know, Alexa Grasso got a 10-8 from one of the judges in the fifth round. I'm wrong as in, what am I wrong about here?
Taito Avasa 3-0 against Rosenstruik.
I'll allow that. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I'll give you that one.
So wrong.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw that straight back at you. Chito Vera versus Corey Sandhagen. I'm sorry, I think that one's worse. I really do. But besides the point, it's up there. So it was a 10-8 scorecard simply for the fact Grasso took the back in the fifth round. Didn't land a submission. It was a late back take near the end of the fight. And that ended up being the deciding factor and resulting in a draw, which meant Grasso retained her belt and Shevchenko left without it, empty-handed. And I almost feel, and this is coming from someone who's, as I said, a Shevchenko fan, that was her last opportunity. Because we know how big of a factor age is. And I think this is almost, I wouldn't say now, but we're really nearing the first proper generation of veteran women's fighters who are coming to the ends of their careers, especially so these at the top level. I feel like with Shevchenko, this is the first time we've seen someone who's been so dominant in the women's part of the game start to falter and lose a bit of their skill set because of age. So it's quite an interesting factor because, you know, each division in the men's side of things, you know, different levels you tend to drop off depending on the division, right? We see flyweights tend to drop off a lot quicker, you know, a bit younger, whilst heavyweights can go a lot longer into their 40s sometimes. So with women's MMA, obviously there's a lot of different factors going at play there. So I'm curious to see how she performs because I don't think she looked as good as she used to in that second Grasso fight, but I thought she did enough to win. I don't know if she'll be able to do the same thing. I think Grasso will have youth on her side. I think she's definitely gotten better. She's in the prime of her career. And if I had to use my brain to pick a decision, it would be a decision for Alexa Grasso defending her belt.
I think the important thing to remember with this fight is more so the intangibles in regards to Mexican Independence Day card, the Sphere.
Yes, good point.
So there's a lot of pressure coming into this, of course, but she's been in high profile and high pressure fights. It's not like it's her first. And then even just a little bit deeper than that in regards to her coach's success, Diego Lopez, and her training partner's success, and all of these different elements that just sort of give her a boost, give her some momentum, give her some good energy coming into this. So it wouldn't... I would love to sit here and just give all the X's and O's to this fight, but it really comes down to the fact that it wouldn't surprise me either way. It wouldn't surprise me if Valentina just was savvy enough to out-hustle her in some positions and just do enough on the judges' scorecard to solidify rounds and have a hand raise. I can 100% see that. But then I can also see the obvious narrative coming towards the end of her career, getting older, being in a lot of fights, a lifelong martial artist. They're all obvious topics and relevant topics. But it really wouldn't surprise me if she just out-hustled her and got her hand raised. But alternatively, like I said, it's just such a big moment, you know? It's such a big moment, and I just feel like this is probably the turning point in Alexa Grasso's career. She's had 2 fights with her, a very close fight. She's got a point to prove. Of course, Valentina does, but she's got a point to prove, and she's got a mark to go and say, I'm the new generation, and really put her nail in this coffin. And I just feel like she's going to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, almost like the Sean O'Malley moment.
True.
At 292. You're very, as I said, I always bring this back. You're very good at spotting those moments. And this does feel like one of them. Of course, my heart wants Shevchenko to win, get it done. And if honestly, I'd like to see her win and then retire. Maybe that's a bit insulting to the division, but I feel like she's done more than enough in the sport. She doesn't really have any questions to answer outside of the Nunes trilogy, which we're never going to see. So I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. But, you know, she has the record for the most amount of title defenses of any woman in the company. It's consecutively. I think it's 7. So, you know, there's not much left to say. I think she's just fighting for... Well, she's, as you said, she's a lifelong mixed martial artist. It's what they do. It's what they love to do for the most part. So either way, I think the only thing we can hope for as a baseline is a really fun fight. And the last 2 were. So they're arguably the 2 highest level women's fighters right now, if you don't include Nunes, who's not really in the space. In the UFC, I'm talking about specifically. I know there's some names in PFL and beyond that we could probably bring up there, you know, coming onto the scene. But again, another can of worms. But it's a fun fight. So if I have to give you a quick fire, final prediction, hit me with it.
I'm going to say Alexa Grasso does another 5 rounds. I think she takes the decision.
Yep, I'm with you there. And I think we can jump on a third fight. As you said, you briefly mentioned, you know, training partner and part-time coach Diego Lopez competing against another Mexican-American in Brian Ortega. And that is, I'd say that's the fans' main event, right? If we're talking about pure, unadulterated violence and excitement, and also 2 of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the game, that's what we're getting with those 2. Matchup long time in the making. Obviously, we nearly got it at, I believe, was it a fight night? Danny Gay stepped in to fill in for Ortega on literally a day's notice, which was not even a day's notice, less than a day's notice, same day's notice,
4
which
hours.
of course was 4 hours, which was unprecedented at the time. So obviously there's a little bit of narrative backbone behind it. I don't even know if Ortega's going to make the walk. We never really know with that guy, but if he does, I hope we get a really fun. Well, listen, he's got a history of that in a lot of ways, and he's never been the most active guy. So I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to make the walk. I hope he does, because stylistically, I think it's really awesome. And obviously, Diego Lopez is the hot topic right now. He's your fighter's favorite fighter. That's the phrase to use, and for good reason. He has everything. He's got the creativity on the mat, on the feet, and outside of the cage as well. And I hope, for the sake of, I guess, the narrative, as I said, and just for excitement and for my own personal gratification, I hope he gets it done in emphatic fashion with another flying triangle. Will that happen? Very unlikely, but I'm just going to say it will, and will it into existence.
I'll be deeply upset if I go this entire UFC Noche card and don't get one 360 panoramic view and immersive audio of a mariachi band. I'll be deeply upset, to be perfectly honest. And I'm thinking about it now. Here, I paint the picture of Sean O'Malley earlier. Before Sean O'Malley bursts out of the curtains and makes a very slow, a very relaxed walk as he does his breath work.
I know where you're going here.
Mariachi band builds into Lupe Fiasco superstar. That's what I need for the main event.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Merab.
No.
I thought I could see Merab going out with that all day.
I could see him doing it more likely, but I like the collab of just that, and then into that. It's just such a banger. You just can't overlook that. But when I think about this fight with Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez, the exact same breakdown I gave to the Sadiq Youssef fight is the exact one that I'm going to give with Brian Ortega. And I'll change my mind when he comes up against someone that I don't believe this to be true. I just feel like he's too dynamic in all the areas of mixed martial arts. Now, Brian Ortega is such an opportunist inside the cage, whether that's striking or whether that's his jiu-jitsu, which is lights out. He can always pull a rabbit out of the hat, so you can never sleep on him. And he is such a dog. We've seen this man in some of the most brutal battles, and he does not give up. And his conditioning is next to none. So he's always in the fight. Now, this is a 3-rounder, which I believe goes against him, because I think Diego Lopez is just going to come out, cause chaos for 15 minutes, and I just think he's going to have too much horsepower in all of the positions of that cage. I think he hits too hard. I think he's a bit more dynamic with his striking. And I just feel, on the very, very surface level, simple form of answer, he's just faster twitch. Brian Ortega is very skilled, but he's more like a slow Loris.
Yeah, I think if you let Ortega have his way and have his game plan offensively, you're going to lose the fight. Because Ortega's one of those guys who, once he's got the wheels in motion, he's enforcing his way of things on the feet and on the mat, of course. But that goes without saying. He can just sort of build on those combinations, and he's quite loose with his striking. If Lopez is willing and quick enough to make it a dogfight, come in, take the front foot, and drive Ortega back, put his back against the fence, that's where for me, it's like a fish out. Brian Ortega is going to look like a fish out of water. It's honestly, standing TKO. I know I said flying triangle, but that's just wishful thinking. If I had to be a realist, I believe we predict this. Actually, we did make this prediction with when this fight was originally penned in, and I stand by the exact same outcome. A standing TKO against the fence. Honestly, first or second round. We're going to see it, because you start pressing against Ortega. He doesn't really know what to do. He starts to freeze up and panic. And he is an opportunist. There is that opportunity to, you never really know with his jiu-jitsu. It's lights out, as you said. But in terms of striking, if things doesn't go his way and he gets overwhelmed, there's not much he ends up, offering back. We saw that with Volkanovski, teeing off on him. And I can see the same with Lopez. And I know he's got a chin, hence why I said the standing TKO. I don't think he'll be able to put him down. But against the cage, I think Herb Dean or whoever is in rotation at the time will be stepping in.
I do think when you were speaking and I was just looking at how this fight looks, we've seen, like I said before, Diego Lopez create that chaos. And a lot of times that's in the pocket, right? In the clinch, really, really close proximity. And we've seen him land devastating uppercuts and rip into the body and again, throwing heavy, heavy strikes. I do think if he overstays his welcome in that pocket with Brian Ortega, it's going to be hard to get, and it's certainly hard to get at that sort of level against that sort of athlete. But Brian Ortega can just wrap a neck, and jump on that guillotine, and
maybe even in a little ninja choke. If he sees that dipping head, similar sort of vibe, but
that's hard. Yeah. That's gonna be hard to get because I just don't think that Diego Lopez is going to make that sort of mistake. I don't think he's going to.
Excited.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a wild one. If he comes out and ninja chokes him, that'll be the craziest prediction of all time. But I think a ninja choke.
Well, it's the same premise though, isn't it? Of leaving the neck out. That's where I'm getting.
It is and it isn't, because typically a ninja choke, right? You see that against the cage, and there's usually more time in where the head is being in a bad position. What I'm sort of saying is there's not even really much time at all between this, but there's enough time for Brian Ortega. And I think even with the ninja choke, I think he's so athletic, he could probably just, like we saw Colby and Leon, just gator roll out of that.
Yeah.
And he could probably be safe. But it's just when Brian Ortega jumps on that neck, we've seen it. And maybe he gets that, and similar to Paddy, jumps on the guillotine and then converts that to the triangle. Oof. Because the triangle, once you've broken that posture with the guillotine and it's T-City, now you're talking better percentages, much better percentages than maybe gassing your arms out on a guillotine. But for the most part, I'm going to go Diego Lopez over 15 minutes. I'm going to take him on a decision on this.
Decision?
Yeah.
You see, yeah, actually, I mean, that's a fair point. I said it myself. Brian Ortega is very durable, and hence why I said I didn't see the knockdown, because that guy can just stay there and he won't give up until the ref forces him to, which is hence my logic behind a standing TKO. Yeah, I said first round. I'm going to move that back to the second, but yeah, you're right. Maybe,
that's good of you.
Maybe Ortega. Yeah, sorry, Brian. I'm disrespecting you a little bit. Your last 10 minutes instead of 5. But yeah, I mean, there's some other matchups on there. Ariel Aldana, Norma Dumont. That's a fun one. I always like watching the former fight. You know, that Mexican boxing style was always awesome. Ignacio Bahamondes, Manuel Torres. That's a really good fight, actually.
That's a great fight.
Yeah. And of course, actually, we also forgot Raul Rosas Jr. versus a guy who I'm not going to pretend I know, but always happy to see him back in the cage. And he's making improvements rapidly, really filling out his frame. I almost compare it. I mean,
Who's he fighting
I'm
again?
absolutely comparing. He's fighting Aori Quileng. Yeah. I've never heard of this guy, but he's actually been in the UFC for a long time, since 2021. I didn't know. Again, too many names. I can't keep track. But what I was just getting at with Rosas is I compare it to Chase Hooper, who's, you know, as he's gotten older, really filled out his frame massively. And we've already seen it, probably even more so, actually. You know, he's how old is he now? 19?
19.
Yeah, I almost feel like he's done it a lot quicker than Chase did. He's already looking a lot wider, a lot stronger, and a lot more mature, you know, particularly his last performances. And I wouldn't say the level of competition is, you know, that high in comparison. But at the end of the day, it's a fight in the UFC. You're fighting guys who have also made it there. So there's no slouch, you know. So, you know, none of these fights he's taking are particularly easy. People just have very high expectations of him to win and win dominantly. And I know he had that setback against, who was it? You might have to jog my memory. I mean, I don't know if you know. Who did he lose to? I can't remember. But he had that loss, and that knocked him down a peg a little bit, and the hype just simmered a little bit. But he's since come back. I believe it's 2 wins on the trot now, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 1. I'm not entirely sure. But point is, he's heading in the right direction, and he's still very young. People forget this. 19 years of age. Champions are usually made at around 30. You know, and Charles Oliveira is probably the best example of that. A guy who struggled so hard, had a reputation sort of branded as a quitter, and was able to silence all those critics and really come on strong in the latter half of his career. So won't be surprised if Raul Rosas Jr. does the very same thing. And of course, he's got the qualities outside of the cage as well. You know, and that's important to have. He recognizes the game. He's part of this new generation of fighters that understands it's not just about how many punches you throw and how hard you hit. It's about how well you can talk on the microphone and how well you can let your personality shine through. And you don't necessarily need it. but it doesn't definitely doesn't
You do.
doesn't hurt you. I mean, I guess you do. Just you don't have to do it the conventional way that people think you do.
Correct.
That's probably the better way of using
I think
it,
he's done a brilliant job of, first of all, marketing himself. He's got that whole Chihuahuas brand, and that
it's everywhere. I get people saying it in my stream.
Everyone
from some little 19-year-old kid.
Everyone is saying it, and he has done an incredible job of marketing that, giving himself a soundbite, and also giving him a chance to sell different merchandise, have a tagline. It's just genius. I'm starting to realize, as my brand grows, how important, and this history has showed us this, but I'm just seeing it viscerally through my own. You have to have some sign off. You have to have some slogan. You have to have some sort of tagline at the very core of anything. Whether you're Tesco's, whether you're Apple, whether you're Keshel's Corner, whether you're Raul Rosas Jr., you have to have something that people can attach that to. And he's done a very good job at that. But also, what I think is quite interesting with him is there's pros to this and there's cons to this, but it depends your outlook on it. He's also training at a lot of different gyms and seeking advice from a lot of different places. So he's been to Fighting Nerds, he's been to Fight Ready, he's been to Extreme Couture. He's really been traveling the world with his training, and I cannot help but think that is only a positive at his age
as well.
His age, specifically at his age, because he has smart people around him. His brothers are all in the sport. And Kevin Rosas, for example, had a very good win most recently on the UFC Fight Pass show as well. So he's absorbing all this information from the very best gyms, coaches, minds in the game. And he's starting to pick and choose what he likes and what he has. And at the very core of it, he always had phenomenal jiu-jitsu. The reason I know about him is because I watched him when he was 16, I believe, on UFC Fight Pass with him and his brother on a grappling show. And they came out this big ball of energy and they were unbelievable. And I just said, there is something about this kid. And every time that he performs, he brings that. And I couldn't be a bigger fan of what he's doing. And when he got into the UFC, like you said, maybe the competition isn't always of the elite level. You're in the most stacked division in mixed martial arts at 135
That's a good
pounds. Point. We have to remember this, right? Bantamweight is just stupid. The depth.
I'd actually wager lightweight coming on strong
wrong.
now.
It's wrong. That's wrong.
Close.
Wrong.
Closer than it used to be. I'll say that.
I think where people get that wrong, and let me paint my picture with this, because I get this a lot. People always say lightweight, and I think I know where you're going with this. I think obviously, as is subjective to a certain extent, but the names in lightweight hold more value. You think of the Poiriers, the Gages, the Chan, the massive premier division in regards to names. But if you're looking at out of the top 20, how deep can it go before that person couldn't win a championship? Mate, you just had Umar at number 13, you know, and that guy is championship caliber. You have a look at the top 15 of bantamweights, and anyone on there, I know it's technically the same for any division, but you look at that and think, yeah, that's not an easy matchup for anyone in the top 15. That's my point with that. So just to round off on Raul Rosas Jr., I was just super impressed with the composure that he was showing, even on his debut. I watched it back the other day, and yes, the striking is obviously not up to the level of his grappling yet, but he's 19. Let's remember. There's a lot of time for growth, but it's the composure and it's the ability to pick his moments, which I was super impressed with. So he's someone to look out for. Daniel Zahuba, again, young Mexican kid training with Eric Nixick out of Extreme Couture, phenomenally talented. And you have a look at tall, longer range strikers with a lot of pedigree and a lot of talent on this card. Daniel Zahuba is one, and Ignacio Barramundez is another. And if you're not familiar with those guys, go back and watch some of their older fights and just enjoy them perform this weekend, because they show out. So yeah, I'm excited for the card, to be honest.
Yeah, as am I. And we've got, a few minutes left before we round off. I think we should just quickly gloss through some creator stuff. I know you did briefly touch on. I say briefly, pretty comprehensively. Show us what the fuck What's the exact name of it?
Toe wrestling.
Toe wrestling. Is it toe wrestling championships or just toe wrestling?
Isn't that hard to remember? Toe wrestling.
No, but toe is it? We have championships on the name, or is it just?
It was the championships
or
yesterday.
Ultimate Toe Wrestling, or just toe wrestling. Okay.
Ultimate Toe Wrestling.
I do like that.
I don't mind that either.
Yeah.
I don't mind that either, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. This is why it's fun, because you have everything at your disposal to change, you know?
Yeah, very true. Very true. But yeah, of course, you did touch on that. But what else has been going on in your creator lives? Any adjustments, new opportunities, mistakes made? Hit me with it.
Lots of adjustments, to be honest. And I'm trying to think of the details to give without boring the listener. But the adjustments made are not leaving anything on the table. I've said this before, but you can constantly refine this. So using content on one platform, for example, how can I repurpose that? And how can I change the dialogue behind it to be applicable for more platforms, whether that's X, whether that's YouTube, whether it's TikTok? And I'm really recently, I've shifted my mindset even more so to identifying myself as a media outlet more comprehensively, because I've definitely strayed away to just more emphasis on specific channels, which can happen naturally. I've had to sort of pull the reins back a little bit and say, right, actually, I need to go onto Twitter and I need to level up my Twitter. So how I've done that is I
did actually see, sorry to jump in, I did see you had that tweet that, I mean, I know we briefly talked about it, or you showed it to me, that the tweet about Blob Tang with Fighter Circus, which absolutely did crazy numbers. With, Theo Von got involved on that. How many likes did that get? Again, I know we don't like to get caught up in that, but it's quite a rare thing on Twitter. Like for like obviously to break out of your niche like that. How many? What did it do?
I'd never had a viral tweet, and I'd never paid enough.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
I never gave it enough attention, never tried as well as I could have done. But that got something like 5 million views, right, on Twitter, quote tweeted by loads of things. But what even went crazier with that is it got picked up by all of the biggest broadcasts. So Sports Center, 50 million followers.
Me.
Reposted that. ESPN reposted that. Theo Von quote tweeting that. So
have you got it pinned on your Twitter?
Yeah, I've got it pinned. So what I decided to do with that, as soon as that went viral, it just gave me this completely different mindset and framework to how I looked at that platform and how I then behaved towards that platform. So the first thing that I went and done was went away and bought the premium first and foremost. So I got verification. Yeah. So that just gives you small details. For example, you can post in high definition. You can post longer tweets. You can just download videos easier. Just some small things that kind of leveled up the game with that. But then also, like I said, repurposing content. So taking TikToks that I know have done well, then taking the full length video, say a minute, 10 seconds, and I know a sweet spot for news coverage on Instagram is about 40 seconds. So if I can storytell for 40 seconds on Instagram, it is the sweet spot for quote unquote longer form content. So what I've been doing is taking my best performing videos on TikTok over a minute and converting that to 40 seconds with editing onto Instagram, and they are going insane. Off the charts insanity. So for context, I posted one the other day with Cyril Gone that I had taken, which has performed well on TikTok, and then I transferred over to Instagram with the correct editing. It goes crazy. It gets 250,000 views. But John Jones likes it.
Oh, then, yes. This is what this was. Okay.
He comments on it. So now I'm in the algorithm.
Oh, did he comment on it?
He comments on it.
What did he say?
Because, well, he actually doesn't comment on it. Let me actually explain the story properly. He likes it. I then know subconsciously the way that the algorithm works. If people engage with your content, naturally, if there's a video which is going to be well catered towards them within a short space of time, let's say 24 hours, they're likely going to be shown that video. So I
Yeah.
had already made a video on TikTok regarding John Jones anyway, but I made sure to post it pretty soon afterwards, tagged him in it, and it was regarding one of his techniques with his oblique kicks. That is one of his most popular techniques. I'd done a breakdown video of that. Then he liked that video and then commented on that with a little don't tell people my secrets sort of emojis, which was pretty cool, right? So in
Nice.
regards to strategy, that's been one of the overarching themes, is just converting that. Before, for reference, I was being lazy because I was converting over 5 videos a day and I knew I could have done more. And I also knew that I could have repurposed them better. So I started doing that. And lastly, on how I sort of recap on that strategy, again, leaving on the table. The way that I started this brand was because I didn't know what I wanted to create content on.
Yeah. So you
And
did everything.
I always say, and I've always said, because I heard this and it makes the most sense, if you don't know what to create, learn how to capture attention. So I would just post clips, rubbish clips. They got better towards the end, and then they started gaining traction and attention, just clips from around the internet and using those. They started performing very well. But what I then realized is I completely transitioned away to doing all my own content and none of that element. Now, that's absolutely fine if you want to, but I also kind of neglected a skill which I had, which was gaining attention, understanding how to use these clips. So I've then gone back to what I used to do, and every day, on top of everything else that I'm doing, I'm making sure that I'm getting 2 clips out every day. Yesterday, one got 1 million views. The day before, another one got 1 million views. The day before that, one got 500,000. Because now, not only do I know how this works, but I'm also leveraging it with my own brand and engagement anyway, which is ever increasing. So now I've taken what I did when I had no engagement, no audience, and no attention, and just doing those things on top of now. So on Instagram at the moment, it's looking like 12 pieces of content a day. But I realized, and I will wrap it up on this, I always say, with anything, if you want to be a professional fighter to the level of John Jones or Tom Aspinall, or you want to be a author or an editor, whatever it may be, you have to ask yourself the question, am I behaving the way that they're behaving? So I've done a competitor analysis of all of the biggest channels on every platform, and I just broke down how often they're posting, what are they posting, what different assets, and I engineered that into my own brand and thought, right, I can be doing way more on Instagram, for example, way more, and I need to behave as such. So I'm at 60,000 followers now. My head is full violence, is on 500,000. I need to, in my brain,
See what they're doing.
think to a different level. I'm not even in the same stratosphere yet. I need to think to that different level. So this was just a way that I started to do that this week. Sorry, that was a bit of a lengthy response.
No, it's good. And I said to you very briefly, I mean, I mentioned this after last week's episode, after we recorded. I said I was struggling for video ideas. And I know I mentioned this to you, and you know where I'm going with it. But I was struggling for video ideas, and I need something. I need a topic. I don't normally jump on trending stuff typically, but I can. I realized I can do that whilst keeping it in my own style that will keep it relatively evergreen. Yeah, and you're like, just keep it simple. Don't be stupid. That's not, you didn't say that exactly, but that's how I'm taking it, because it was true. John Jones versus Tom Aspinall was the hottest topic in MMA, and it's pretty telling because we never shut up about it. So why not do a video covering that saga? And lo and behold, I have done one, and it did, and is continuing to do pretty well. So as I said, I have to give you your flowers on that front. So might have to look to you again in the near future. But I've got some cool stuff planned. And I also mentioned, actually, this is something I wanted to just quickly touch on before we wrap up, is I was making changes to my workflow and how I approach content. Again, I was actually talking to the Mixed Martial Academic, again, just briefly about approaching length of content and how to take it and get to the next level, etc. Little things. And I realized, I want to do more longer videos, like the more in-depth 45-minute pieces, because I feel like there's so much more stories to tell more in depth. And I feel like once I do those longer videos, I can really sink my teeth into specific chapters rather than having to jump through them a little bit quicker. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is now once a month. So normally I do 1 video a week, 4 times a month, right? So, 4 videos a month. Now I'm going to switch that to 3 but one of them is going to be over the 2 weeks period, and then the other two on a 1 week basis. And the other alternative is also, I know, just taking on board what you said a while back about looking at editors and not going 200% in, but taking a little bit of time. I might do on a once per month basis. So they cover one of those 1 week videos. So then I could be doing 4 videos a month again, but one of them is double the length essentially. And I've also got an editor working on another one. So
one thing that I want to just rewind on to back to, which is all very exciting, by the way. No, it's cool. It's just on that John Jones thing and Tom Aspinall thing. You said, to give you your flowers, not give me my flowers. I heard someone say this, and it sounds like the stupidest thing ever. And I've said it before, and I will say it again. Whatever creator you are, when something is working, do more of it. Period.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that, and I don't even listen to it half the time.
This is my point, right? We all know the answers deep down if we do enough research and we're obsessed with it, which we are. When something is working, do more of it. So I believe you said, I've done a Tom Aspinall video. I said, okay, do another one. It's like your whole job is storytelling, so you just have to respin the story. But that is a good point to end on. When something is working, do more of it. It works in MMA. If you're an MMA fighter, the principles are the same. If you're
that's me and my triangles.
Exactly, right? And I say this because I've been in the teaching room, in the gym, and the coach has said the same thing. They said to the student in the middle of the round, why did you stop throwing the right? He said, I'd already thrown it 3 times. He said, yeah, but you weren't defending it. So why would you stop? If I keep slapping you in the face and you're not doing anything about it, I'm going to keep slapping you in the face. Same principle. If you're throwing right hands at Tom Aspinall videos and they keep landing, why would you stop? Keep riding the momentum.
I can give you a reason, and that's more on a personal basis, is that I don't want to stick on the same topics, and I feel like I'm retreading on news.
Tell a different story. That's on you to spin it differently. But if something is working, and also, if people are watching it and engaging with it, why are you not doing it? Is it a pride thing? Or I don't want to sound like, who cares?
I don't enjoy it. Well, on terms of an enjoyment basis, I do want to fundamentally enjoy what I'm doing. And if I'm covering the same topics over and over, there is that element of, I don't enjoy it as much. Like I'll say it firsthand. I know the video performed well. I wouldn't say I enjoyed making it as much as I did some of my other recent videos.
Which is fair. Which is fair.
And I knew that going in because I'd already done a John Jones documentary and I'd also done an Aspinall documentary a little bit further back. So I knew that going in. So I do actually value that. I think there is something to be said there. But which
is a good point. But it comes back to what are your priorities essentially, right?
Yes.
It's like, is your priority is enjoyment, or it's like that's for the listener to decide. I say
why not have both?
This is my point, right? This is for you to decide. But we need to wrap up because I really need to go piss.
Yeah. Anyways, this has been the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 66. Will's leaving. He's out of here. And we'll see you next Sunday. Have a good one.